Hello and welcome back to She Builds with AI and Happy New Year, dear listeners. I'm so excited to kick off 2026 with you and to start the year with a conversation that truly reflects what this podcast is all about. Women building boldly at the intersection of creativity, technology, and business. Today's guest is someone whose journey spans fashion, media, entrepreneurship, and AI innovation. And I couldn't imagine a better way to open the year. I'm thrilled to welcome Jill Asemota to the show. Jill began her career in fashion journalism before launching her own fashion label at a young age, later building a fashion and style PR agency for professional athletes. Today, she is the founder of Paralle Pictures, where she works with premium brands to rethink how visual content is created using AI. This conversation came together thanks to a wonderful introduction by Gemma A. Williams, author and curator and journalist who writes for Vogue and Forbes. Gemma, thank you for connecting us and for supporting women's voices in this space. Introductions like these are highly, highly welcome. In this episode, we talk about Jill's transition from fashion to tech, how the pandemic became a catalyst for innovation, what AI is changing in fashion content creation, and what it really means to build responsibly with emerging technology. Let's dive in. Jill, you were born in Heidelberg, Germany, with German-Nigerian roots, and you entered the fashion world quite early, modeling internationally alongside your studies, working in fashion journalism and media. How did your multicultural upbringing and those early international experiences shape your passion for fashion and the path you chose?
Hi, first of all, thanks so much for having me today on your podcast, Julia. As you correctly said, I grew up in Heidelberg in a very international environment. So finishing high school, or the German gymnasium, as we call it, also started modeling. And that was my first entrance into the fashion world, I would say. And through modeling, I gained the first insight on how fashion brands work. Next to that, I also began my studies in media. So I saw different angles, fashion, media, and how things would collide together, and then how actually I could find my career path within storytelling and brand building. So that was quite exciting as a first step to enter the fashion world.
Nice. Really interesting. I like to see how early exposure shapes like your long-term vision, your long-term path, right? Even if you don't see it at the time. Really, really cool. Jill, at just 23 years old, you launched your first fashion label called Chaya and ran it for several years. Looking back, what did building a fashion brand at such an early age teach you about entrepreneurship, and what were some of the biggest wins and also toughest lessons you had to learn back then?
Absolutely. So that was a really honest and valuable time because it was my first venture, and I always was quite entrepreneurial thinking. And next to just working in media, I had the strong will to found something for myself. And I think what was the main challenge was basically all of the different parts that come together when you found a brand. So think of product and design, and then operations, sales, production. So all of this you kind of underestimate, I think, at this very young age, having no experience. And I made wrong bets on production, wrong timing decisions. I think I wasn't really, having the team set up right at this time. So, that was quite challenging, but I think that's the only way to learn, just to get things started, try things. And I definitely learned a lot in negotiating, recovering from certain mistakes, right? And then also not doing these mistakes again, and how to keep moving if things are not going as planned. So I think my biggest win in this case was not really commercial success. It was more like entrepreneurial thinking, or learning how to think entrepreneurial, building resilience, and basically shaping a better awareness of what it means to found an own business. So that was quite challenging, but also quite valuable in terms of experience as well.
Definitely. Really, really cool. Not many people can say that, right? To found something like at 23. Really, really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm really, really glad you managed to navigate those hurdles and came out even stronger, and just having the experience that really shaped you as a founder, as a person, and building resilience for everything that followed. Cool. Still later on, you founded a fashion and style PR agency for professional athletes. What drew you in that particular niche, and how did working so closely with athletes shape your understanding of branding, visibility, personal identity?
So after I had my fashion brand, I decided to go back into media for a bit. So I started working for Sky, the TV station, and I was basically working around production of lifestyle formats around like the Champions League show. And with lifestyle formats, I mean like basically reporting about football players and what they do beyond the pitch, meaning their lifestyle is, how where they shop, in terms of like their style and fashion sense. So one day an agent or a manager of one of those football players came up to me and asked me, well, you have a great sense of style. Would you like to advise some of my clients and my football players? Think of David Beckham, for instance, who next to being a very successful athlete also has become a style icon, right? So a lot of your players at this time were interested in becoming similar personalities also in terms of fashion. So yeah, my job basically was to transform, or let's say build their second, like professional brand in the field of lifestyle and fashion. So I was linking them to fashion brands and basically negotiating deals with lifestyle and fashion brands and turn them into brand faces, let's say. So that was a quite interesting time as well and helped me a lot with shaping brands or personal brands specifically. And also, obviously, then it's about building content around these individual personalities and also in terms of building their social media presence, styling them and shaping personalities and shaping personal brands. So that was exactly a bit linked to what we do right now. So basically also creating narratives and storytelling around different personalities and for brands and personalities. So it was a quite interesting time.
Sounds like it. Really, really impressive. Sounds really like an incredible environment just to learn and to grow in, and also the people you met, I imagine, people that others would probably dream of meeting. Nice. Jill, the COVID-19 lockdowns marked a major turning point in your career. And of course, it was a very challenging time for physical retail and fashion industry. Can you take us back to that moment? How did the pandemic reshape the way you thought about producing fashion imagery?
Yeah, I think COVID was a major wake-up moment for fashion production because obviously shops were closed, travel stopped, teams could not gather anymore. So the entire visual content production chains broke down. And that actually showed how fragile and this whole system is, and especially also how many factors are kind of like basically depending on that. So I started why is visual content production still dependent on physical presence and logistics, and it pushed me kind of deeper into thinking how we could basically digitize the full content production process. And so it wasn't really about replacing creativity in a traditional sense, but about how to make production, let's say, more resilient and scalable to outside factors. So I think that was a major wake up moment for it. Interestingly, during that time, the technology started to rise. One with virtual worlds. I think we all remember the metaverse that came up in 2020, 2021, which was hugely announced by Meta. And so there was a shift into virtual worlds, and that I found that quite interesting. Decided to explore this field a bit more.
Nice. Fascinating, really, how crisis moments just spark these new innovative ideas. Really nice. You started exploring virtual models, metaverse, before generative AI tools were actually widely accessible. How did the arrival of Gen AI later change things for you, and what suddenly became possible?
Yeah. So it's super interesting because before AI tools came to the market, things were a bit different. So obviously my first idea on bringing the content production into virtual worlds or digitizing the whole process was looking into 3D scanning. So there's like a specific technology, or let's say it's called photogrammetry. So you would go into, let's say, a booth and you have around 24 to 100 cameras. It depends on how big the booth is, but then you would get shot, like there's single shots, and then your whole body gets kind of like scanned and you have a 3D avatar of yourself. So that was the first step basically before AI could make it possible to create a digital twin of yourself. So there were technologies like StyleGAN. So these are all the AI technologies that would have been used, but obviously they were not as efficient or not as stable in, creating character consistent avatars. And yeah, so those systems work, but they were really heavy and they were expensive. And I remember I went to a Berlin 3D company and tried to explore different ways on how we could create virtual clones of real life models. And it was quite, expensive. We did a long technical pipeline and bigger teams for that. So that with the diffusion models, so meaning the generative AI image models, foundational models like Midjourney, I guess that was one of the first big foundational models that came on market in 2022. Things changed, and it was a good timing for obviously my idea as well. Suddenly generate really hyper realistic images, with the different variations in the style control that hadn't been possible before. Right? So, it moved from, let's say, asset creation to generation pipelines. That shift was really huge and it was really crucial for us to transform just from 3D avatars into really running a visual content production system. So those underlying AI image models really helped us to, let's say, make a business out of it.
Really cool. It's just amazing how that shift just aligned perfectly with your vision and came at the perfect timing. It just was meant to happen.
Absolutely.
Jill, with Paralle Pictures, you work with fashion and premium brands. From your experience, how are fashion and premium brands using AI today when it comes to visual content creation?
Yes. So it's very interesting to explore how also brands have adopted AI. I think last year it was still kind of like experimenting, and now you can really see how they are adopting AI. They're still, however, very selective and careful, I would say. So the main use cases are obviously for e-commerce imagery and then the full campaign content production, but also, let's say, only using AI for backdrops, like backdrop replacements. Specifically when working with our clients, obviously they always see AI as an add-on. So let's say they would produce a still in the traditional way with real photo shootings, but then obviously as a lot of brands need a lot of content, they would then come up to us and say, well, we need additional content for social media or a certain campaign to realize in a very efficient, fast way. I think it's still, there's still obviously real production in the traditional sense happening, where AI is currently used mainly as add-on to just, have a bigger roster of content available quick and fast and scale away. Yeah.
Super interesting insights. Jill, you initially built Paralle Pictures as a highly customized service-based model and are now evolving toward a more scalable product platform. What have been the biggest learnings from that transition so far?
Absolutely. So to be honest, we're kind of right now in a transition phase. So we started as a service, and I think it was really important to start as a service to get a better understanding of what fashion brands actually also look for. I mean, it's a totally new way to approach content creation, right? And AI really be compared to traditional content production, like you would have a full team, a photographer, model, hair and makeup, all of these people that are required. And now with AI, it's a different, let's say, approach to it. So I think, first of all, you have to educate the brands and the clients. And AI is not like, we cannot really reshoot. We have to regenerate the image. We have to give it a prompt. So we have to describe the full setting, right? Instead of putting a model on the set, we have kind of like put together a description of how this image should look like. So there was first of all, a very educational process to it, I think. And then there are a lot of questions also about data, obviously. I think the bigger and the luxury brands are really pretty much aware of where they put their data. Then they are very, let's say, aware of that these needs to happen in controlled environments. Obviously, if a brand is launching their new spring-summer collection, they don't want it to be out there somewhere or share their data of their product been launched yet. all of this needs to be in kind of like a secured, controlled environment happening. So sometimes brands are a bit, strained on using tools like Midjourney because they're afraid of their data, obviously, or what happens with data.
Definitely.
And then, what they're also kind of aware of is, or let's say what's important to them is that they want to keep their visual brand identity, meaning that they're afraid that AI imagery can look too AI-ish, like too polished, too fake. And what we basically do is we help the brands in creating prompts and workflows that don't look like AI, rather than different, so that the imagery looks really hyper realistic and really refrain from looking AI polished. So we use curated templates or like a very controlled, stable pipeline environment. We used human art direction. That's also very important because many people always think that AI does the full job. However, I think you have to have the understanding of how a good image should look like. That means you need to understand what does lighting look like, which camera to use, the different poses, the expressions of the model. There's so many different parameters that come inside a prompt. So yeah, all of that basically also requires human art direction. Yeah. And in the end, everything needs to be in a controlled, stable environment. So yeah. I think that's coming back to your questions, how they use AI today. They still basically rely on, let's say, expertise as ours, but also a lot of brands, as we've seen, are exploring the tools themselves. Let's say there's Midjourney, there's obviously still Stable Diffusion, then there's a Nano Banana and all of these tools and image making tools that brands certainly nowadays explore to find different approaches to create AI imagery.
Really, really interesting. Classic founder journey, validate first through service, then scale through product. Really nice. Very important to understand your customer, their wants and needs. Having the human in the loop, I think that will also stay in that industry, like play a big role further on. Jill, AI generated imagery in fashion raises also important questions around realism, representation, bias, and ethics. Based on your hands-on experience, what should brands be most mindful of when working with AI-generated models and visual content?
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely those models that we can use are biased. So the output will be biased. That's also something that we always have to be aware of. So human review, I think, and then also diverse data sets are essential, right? So I think the model has to be trained with a really strong data set, like a diverse data set, for instance, when it comes to image generation. And then also I think, at some point we still have to make the viewer, let's say, of the image aware that it's AI generated. I think that's important, right? Because things we shouldn't kind of like give the expectation that it is real. I think it can cause confusion in many ways. So transparency matters in that field. And specifically also personal likenesses or the identity rights must be protected and respected, right? So for instance, if we would then create an AI twin of a fashion model, it should be always permission-based and contractually clear. And I always say responsible AI is super crucial in what we are building right now, right? We can see all the deep fakes, for instance, or I don't know if you heard about the Gen AI image tool there from Elon Musk that kind of like created and not so, let's say, safe for work content of diverse various celebrities. So therefore, it's very important to kind of like be aware of identity rights and not respect individual rights when creating imagery and making sure that we don't hurt any rights of real people.
Definitely right. And you're being at the forefront of building responsibly. Really cool. I think, especially in creative industries, it really forces us to rethink representation and inclusion, and also for us personally in our everyday life, just to be more reflective and to recognize our own unconscious biases. Very important topic.
Absolutely. And it's also important when it comes to prompting. So as we know that these systems are biased, and it's always important to know how to speak to the tool or to kind of like highlight specifically representation and inclusion within the prompt, right? And to make the tool also understand that you're aiming for a diverse or an inclusive result or outcome.
Totally right. Totally correct. Jill, you've built and operated across very different worlds: fashion, branding, technology, and now AI entrepreneurship. How has your leadership style evolved over time?
Yeah, I think my leadership style has become quite intuitive, I would say. I mean, especially in tech and AI, it's very different than in working in creative and aesthetic fields because you're very structured and decision driven. I think I became more process oriented and more outcome oriented. And I think clear communication is very important, decisions faster. And also I think separating, emotion from execution more than ever before. So I've just learned to build around, let's say, reliability. And also I think I have strong work ethics. But I've become, I'd say, very process and outcome oriented working in tech and AI rather than just, relying on creative, beautiful outcomes. Is how working in tech and AI has evolved my leadership.
Nice. Really cool. Also, self-leadership, also important topic when you're building as a founder.
100%. And I always come back to saying being resilient is really I would say, most crucial characteristic or personality trait that you have to have when founding your own business, whether it's an AI company or whatever kind of company, because there will always be hurdles and it will never go, from 0 to 100. So I think just sticking to it and never giving up and really, staying positive, whatever comes your way is the most important and crucial thing in founding your own business.
Definitely. Totally agreed. Jill, finally looking to the future. What excites you most about where AI is heading in fashion and brand communication? And what advice would you give to women who are thinking about building a business at the intersection of creativity, technology, and AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the technology is evolving fast. So I think that's quite interesting to see what happens because obviously the possibilities seem to be endless. I think, however, I don't really believe that the machine will handle everything. I think still there will be a very valid human art direction and creative processes, but linked to those AI production infrastructure. So there's a whole new way to approaching visual content production. I think whilst the technology is evolving, we will get better and better high quality output. So I think that's quite exciting to see where this will get to, and also in video specifically, not only images, but also video. I think you've seen all of these tools like VO3 and Kling AI and what these AI video tools can now already do. And that's quite exciting to see. But also, I think and hope, and I think it's very crucial working in this field. I have the proof of it that it's crucial to keep the human in the loop. So having a hybrid approach to it. And then, my advice for women building at the intersection of technology and creativity is basically just really to validate early demand for your idea. I think that's the most important thing. Also, when you have a business idea, you should basically see if there's a market for it, then talk to real customers and build something that really solves a real world problem, right? That's, I think, always the most important. How can technology make things more efficient and really solve problems? And then if you have a great idea, always say go for it and try to find the right people, speak to as many people as you can and try to build a great network, and then things will kick off.
Nice. Very wise words. I think that's incredibly empowering for all women listening. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill, for sharing your journey and vision from early entrepreneurship to building at the forefront of AI and fashion innovation. What an inspiring way to start the year. I'm so excited to see where your journey will take you next. Conversations like this are a reminder that the future isn't just built in straight lines. It's shaped through the courage to evolve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment and share it with someone who's thinking about building something new this year. And be sure to follow Jill and Paralle Pictures on social media. I've linked all relevant profiles in the show notes so you can continue exploring her work. Until next time, here's to a year of bold ideas, meaningful technology, and women building what's next.